welcome back to SMITE Masters, ladies and gentlemen. Joining me, it's BlazyBard, and I've got Mifflin here on the desk with me.
I thought you were saying like BlazyBard was joining you.
Me and BlazyBard are doing this segment.
Yeah,
so it's
I'm
me,
Mifflin.
Yeah, it's me, Mifflin, and BlazyBard over there.
No, that's not. No, I'm Mifflin, and that's BlazyBard.
That's
Please
incorrect.
don't get it twisted.
I thought I was Mifflin.
You're not.
Okay. Well, I don't have to be confused about who our two teams are for this game coming right up. We have the Xibalba Storm and the Mambo coming up here. Two teams who have been, showing us some pretty interesting stuff this last season. Some, familiar names from both teams, but Mambo coming from ex-pros,
World champions
even. There's a lot of big names clashing in this next game.
Yeah, I think so. It's very interesting. I would almost argue it's like new guard versus old guard. I feel like Hex Mambo has generally been playing to their own style for the last couple of years, but we got to take a look back at how we got here.
Absolutely. So going up into this, we've already seen the Wargs going up against the Tanukis so far today. The Tanukis making it up, of course, into that top bracket, and the Wargs down into the loser's side. But we'll have to see who is going to go up against them in those best of threes. Of course, remembering this game here is a best of one. So it's all to play for. Lots of cheese strats I'm hoping to see. It's all about securing that first game, and then they can kind of sit comfortably on either of these sides of the bracket.
Yeah, and for those of you at home, win match 8, you progress. Win either of the other 2 matches afterwards, you also progress. But the last 2, maybe a little bit more interesting because you send somebody home. And if you're anything like me, you thrive on negativity. It's all about inflicting a loss rather than getting a win for yourself. So those are the 2 sets that I would argue are must-watches.
You're the kind of guy to pull a pin on Grenade and be like, we're both going down now.
No.
Just for the satisfaction of seeing that person lose.
No, because then I'm also losing.
Oh, okay, all right, I misread that. Then.
My life.
Yeah. Okay. Well, not a literal grenade.
Okay, well, use
like a metaphorical grenade.
All right, so like I think we're like talking about SCC right now.
Talking about the Hex Mambo specifically. Now, this team, as we already mentioned, made up of some star talent. We have ex-champions on this team. Mifflin, tell me a little bit about what these guys have been doing so far.
It's been a lot of the exact same stylings as they had for the last couple of years. I think they really do prefer to play through Trixtank in that support role. We've hailed him as one of the most wild supports out there, the one that plays with the most abandon, does not have any regard for his own life, and his team seems to echo that sentiment. Hex Mambo is a squad that I think more so than maybe any other team in either region just relies on their competitive pedigree and their mechanical skill to find them the majority of their wins. They're not a squad that's coming out and bringing cheesy strategies. They might have picks that are off meta because they fits their styling, and those were the picks that they played back in their competitive primes, if you would. But this is a squad that I think you really just need to be able to survive that late game team fight. This is not a team that's going to blow you out early. They're waiting for that. I say late game, but around 20 or so minutes in is where they start to group up as 5 and just leverage all that veteranship to find significant wins around neutral objectives.
And it's something that Johnny has shown us that he's truly capable of doing. This may be one of the newest up-and-comers onto this team. We saw him in the SPL last year. He had his debut year. Didn't go great for him because, obviously...
A couple pentas.
Well, a couple pentas, but that kind of Valkyrie squad, unfortunately, not able to play on land, so a couple difficulties there across the board. I'm really excited to see what Johnny is going to be doing. I still think this is one of maybe the best junglers out there at the moment.
Definitely the best at his individual style. Johnny loves to be that late game hyper carry. He'll lock in things like the Set and the Apollo if you'll let him. I'd be curious to see whether or not he's willing to play the Apollo, considering how much Hunter has been prioritized and how much Apollo games he was playing back before
Maybe
Hunters were all that good
there
as well. I'm curious to see. But they've got difficult opponents today up against the Xibalba Storm. Previously, the Fun Havers, a squad that is very apt to do exactly that. And having had the opportunity to speak with a couple of them before this set, they said, and I quote, "Keep your eyes on this match because we're going to bring out," this is a direct quote, I'm not paraphrasing, "some of the cringiest, cheesiest, most disgusting, bottom of a Wendy's dumpster after a rainy day, just garbage, crazy style of pick. So I am very curious to see exactly what that is, because they would not go into any further detail.
Okay, so let's do some theory crafting, Mifflin. The solo lane. What are we expecting this bottom of the garbage can pick?
I have literally no idea. I've got nothing for you. I will say that, considering Oceans is playing for this team, previously of LG fame, has played in the SPL for ADCs, now playing support for Xibalba Storm. He has always been a player that is very willing to just go completely off meta. He is not concerned whatsoever with any of his contemporaries are doing. He's not concerned with what the meta dictates. He's going to play exactly what he wants to play on day of. If that's Ymir, sure. If that's raw support, sure. He might be blink flashbanging people. I couldn't tell you. I just know that whatever he's going to do is likely to be very interesting.
So potentially some Chunga support, something completely
that'd be cool.
something completely different from Oceans. And we've got a couple replays here from Joshi here in that mid lane role. Been playing a couple Hunters already so far in this season, so definitely not going to feel too out of his comfort zone coming into 9.5.
And for those of you who are not completely in the know of who Xibalba Storm is, if you haven't been watching them since their days as the Fun Havers, I'll break it down for you now. You've got Uzi, Magic Feet, Joshi, Oceans, and In My Zen, with Puckham acting as the coach right now. This is a squad that is just very eclectic all the way across the board, with some veteran talent, with some of these newer players. You'd think a team that's got guys like Uzi and Oceans, who've got such a long competitive pedigree behind, or even In My Zen to a certain extent, they would be maybe the largest standouts. But the guy on your screen right now, Joshi, has continually impressed me. That is just incredibly talented, has a very diverse god pool, has been holding his own. And one of the main issues I find with some of these newer, air quotes, players matching up on teams with some of these more veteran players is that generally they'll let nerves get the better of them. They'll say, okay, well, it's not really my time to carry. I'm here to facilitate the guys who've been doing it a lot longer. Joshi is not concerned about that.
Sure.
Joshi is playing Joshi, and that's all he's going to do, and his team has looked much, much better for it. I'm very excited to see what Xibalba Storm has got cooked up for us.
For sure. And, well, we're not the only people who have opinions about these two teams. We've got a little bit of a conversation that we've been having with some of the SCC teams. So let's have a look at what these guys had to say.
Oh, and hold it. This light's really, really bright. There we go.
There you go.
I think we performed above expectations. I didn't think we would take that many games this season, but we surprised ourselves. The new patch just dropped, so we're all over the place right now, and learning this new meta is going to take a couple more weeks of practice. So once we fix the kinks, then we'll slowly learn different ways to adapt. We're fairly confident against Hex Mambo. We don't know much, or at least I don't know much, but we'll do some more research right before the games. Standout player for Hex Mambo, probably Johnny, mainly because he seems to impact the game a lot for their team. I'm confident we can make it to top 2. Yeah.
I just want to point out that Uzi had such a big idea about putting on those sunglasses. It was a whole deal. We had to take like 3 different takes of him doing the put on. Sorry, I can't have a look at this. But some interesting stuff coming out from Uzi, saying not really too sure the kind of things that they want to go up against. They were saying they're going to do some research now. I think they're in their booths right now typing out who is Ekram.
Yeah, he's lying, by the way. Uzi has not changed at all. In the 5 or 6 years I've had the pleasure of knowing this guy and playing with and against him, he has not changed whatsoever. Uzi is always just doing Uzi picks. He's saying, well, I'll learn the meta. I'll figure it out. 9-5's big changes. I'd be surprised if he's not locking in, like, I don't know, Nike, Odin, the picks that he's been playing for going upwards of 6 years now. RDO still probably firmly within his god pool. But he's allowed to have this, I suppose, paradigm. He's allowed to think this way because of how mechanically talented he is. Uzi has been a player that has always just pressed his buttons very, very well, and that has essentially carried him throughout his competitive career. So always a treat to watch him. He's almost reminiscent of the entirety of Hex Mambo in that he found his style a long time ago and he's stuck with it.
And that's really a treat to see, especially in these kinds of tournaments where, as we've been mentioning so far for the whole week, the meta hasn't settled yet. There's still a lot of experimentation to go through. Having your own style that you've been sticking to through a bunch of different metas can be a huge boon for these players.
It can be. Dictating the pace, maybe even... I suppose, and it's in an emergent meta, when things like this change so rapidly and so drastically as 9.5 has done to SMITE, you can do something that I like to call spreading misinformation. If you're in a scrim against some of these teams and you're just playing something that is just working for you, let's say, hypothetically, Bakasura is popping off in scrims right now.
Sure.
Is Bakasura legitimately good? I don't know. Or maybe that guy's just good with it. And it kind of dictates the meta and how it develops throughout the LAN. So I think a lot of these teams throughout this week so far, only on day 2, but already gone through 6 entire sets, have maybe influenced each other a little bit on what exactly they think is good. So as we wait for the SPL teams to get involved, I think we're going to start to see more and more of the self-isolated SCC meta develop. And then once SPL comes in, we could be looking at a completely different version of 9.5, which is what makes it so interesting to have these lands in these emergent metas, to watch these guys develop and culture themselves as the week goes on. It's just a treat to watch.
And it'll be really interesting to see how those two styles of gameplay clash in this last set of this week that we've got. We're bringing in the Scarabs and the Valkyries to go up against the top 2 of these teams coming in. So if the SPL teams have been scrimming with their own metas, it should be a really interesting thing to behold. But, Mifflin, talking about what's good and what's not, pick some bans for game number 1 here. Well, there is only one game. So I'm really interested to see what these, how did you put it, bottom of the barrel, Wendy's dumpster picks from the Xibalba Storm.
Well, so explicitly, I think the takeaway is how weird the picks are going to be. The strategies that they're going to employ during the match. They had very much stressed that to me. So either they're making me look the fool. They're either making me look the fool on the desk and they're going to play standard, or they're going to stick to their word and play some of the stranger, more eclectic selections. That said, already with the ban phase starting to roll out, I think seeing Mercury in first slot, not something we're very used to seeing. Could be that Mercury devolves their strategy a fair bit. In a game 1 situation of 1, you really want to be able to target some of the best selections from the opposite side. And when you look at Johnny, I think of him as an auto attack jungler through and through. He's playing things like the Merc, like the Set, like the Erlong Shen. So the Storm in their interview say, hey, Johnny's probably the biggest threat. Seems like they didn't lie. Another Johnny signature banned out in the second slot. Loki taken away.
Yeah, absolutely. And, on top of being very signature picks for Johnny, as you mentioned, this Mercury has been played a lot yesterday specifically to varying degrees of effectiveness. And on the flip side, already seeing Mambo looking to get rid of some of these hunters. Now, Mifflin, we saw Chernobog last game, and I think we all agree that Cherno's kind of in this upper echelon, but you and I were talking a little bit about this Ola yesterday as well, and specifically, if we think his style of really heavy burst damage really fits into the extra health bars.
Yeah, I think that Ul has been very much so nerfed in his early effectiveness. You're not really that guy who's going to tick over to level 3, toss out an axe, and just remove somebody to like 80% of their HP bar. Nowadays, it's going to take a couple of those combos to create space. That's not to say that Uller is bad. He still is certainly very strong, very potent, and very good at what he does, which is generating that pressure. But it's not the same level of kill pressure that we once saw. If I had to guess, Ul is probably going to make his mid, or make his home rather, exclusively in mid. I don't think we're going to see too much Ul in the duo lane because of how much emphasis we've been seeing from these players towards scaling hunters that have attack speed stims or any sort of stim that can leverage that crit build or go in towards the kin size, both style of build, a tank shred and crit. Not exactly Ul's wheelhouse.
For sure not. And as the last 2 bans get taken out here, it's going to be Cleo and Nemesis. The Storm once again taking away another auto-attack heavy jungler. I think maybe Nemesis, as you mentioned, before, works a lot better with that kind of power build with the auto-attack cancellations in between, but still definitely falls into that same category of characters that Johnny really likes to flex his wings on. And speaking of wings, Jing Wei going to be the first pickup here for Mambo alongside the Kumbhakana.
Yeah, that is a Kumakarna very early selected. Has some flex potential between both Trix Tank and Deathwalker, so don't get too caught up in that one just yet. Jingwei, though, almost certainly slated for the duo lane, one of the safest hunter selections, as well as just a straight-up phenomenal scaler come late game. She makes perfect use of this new age, kin size, Silver Branch, Wind Demon, and Venom Deathbringer style of builds. So Hex Mambo find themselves a very high tier selection in that first slot, and maybe something to keep us guessing as the game goes on. But there is already one distinct counter matchup. It's Kumakarna up against Zhongqi. You start releasing the spirits, Kumakarna can just remove you from the playfield. Doesn't matter if you're unleashing ghosts on your opposition, if you're 6 miles in the air from an epic uppercut. So I really like that pickup immediately. But as I said, the Storm have got themselves already a very strange draft. Zhongqi, Baron Samdi into Osiris. Gotta assume that it's Zhongqi mid. Maybe it's Baron Samdi solo. Could be Baron Samdi support. Osiris could be jungle. Could be solo. The Storm gonna keep us guessing.
I think this I would not be surprised to to see this Baron going into the solo lane. It's where we've seen him most commonly so far. This isn't really a character that we've seen Oceans playing all too often, but that doesn't preclude it from the realm of possibility. But Mambo picking up the Baba Yaga here, I think now this is an interesting pickup.
It is. Baba Yaga has been seeing a little bit more play, especially in 9-5, with Warlocks being a little bit more itemized towards. Baba Yaga going to stack that up very, very effectively. Could even look towards a double stack build. Considering the games have been a little bit longer, you can go for a little bit more so the scaling in your itemization early on, so Baba Yaga fits that style. Also has just phenomenal burst. So I used to be a big detractor from the Slavic goddess, but nowadays I'm all right with her.
I just love that once again Storm has banned out this heavy AA attack character. I wouldn't be surprised to see Set maybe banned out here last, and
Genius.
That's exactly what it's good. Thank you. I it wasn't really a hard one to go for. It seems Storm definitely found themselves
weird flex. Take the compliment, maybe.
Okay, all right. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Hey, no problem.
But no, Set definitely something we've seen Johnny make a lot of highlight plays on as well. If anything, I'm surprised they decided to put this in the second round of bans.
Yeah, I'm surprised that Johnny's been waiting so long on his pick, maybe trying to counter-select exactly what the Storm are going for. Johnny is a player that Hex Mambo are very willing to play through at times, so allowing him to have his best odds at having a great match could be what Hex Mambo are looking for as we try to figure out what this fourth pick is going to be. The Hex Mambo have got a composition that is still got some flex potential. We already talked about the Kumakarna and where he can go.
Oh.
That is not something I was expecting to see at all this week. I had almost considered Facilitator Assassins to be just by and large worse than the other style of selection. Hunbots does not deal a whole lot of damage. Blanket Statement, Overhand Smash, Sacred Monkey, not exactly great at burning through these HP bars. And in the early game, he's going to be very much so limited in his efficacy. Fear No Evil is essentially the character now. I'm no longer going to call him Hunbots. I'm going to call him just his ultimate, because that seems to be, in 9-5, his main strength. But that is likely a pick that's going to head over to the jungle. I would be surprised if anyone besides Johnny is piloting that for themselves. As the Xibalba Storm hover another Guardian and a Heimdall, which would leave this Baron Samdi in the solo lane, have Zhongqi head it down in mid, and then Osiris in the jungle, if I had to guess. But again, there's a lot of flex here. Baron Samdi could go over to support. You could have Ymir in solo.
For sure.
You could have Osiris in solo with Ymir in the jungle. There are a lot of options here. Every single one of these picks, maybe barring Zhongqi, and even including him, because I think he could go solo, has got flex potential. And the fact that my brain is actually scrambling, trying to figure out the most effective placement of these picks, means that Hex Mambo have got to be guessing themselves as well.
Storm's already in your head. This has got to be that plan that they were trying to execute on. It's not necessarily about making a whack draft.
It is weird.
Well, it is definitely weird, but it's about making you second guess where these characters are going to go. And Mambo round off their draft here with a Geb, but now I'm not a fan of the Geb. I don't know if he's maybe the best character in the meta right now, but that passive certainly is going to help him out against the crits that we're going to be seeing probably from the Heimdall. So definitely could be a worse character here, but I think this is going to be a big question mark on the Hunbots.
Yeah, there's a couple of issues I think with this Hex Mambo draft in 9-5 particularly. If it is Kumbhakarna in the solo lane, you're really struggling to find any sort of wave clear. He's going to have a very hard time doing that. Minion wave is much more difficult to clear out here in 9-5. The same could be said of Geb over in the support role. Jingwei is not the strongest clear on the planet, certainly not terrible. She's, I would say, about middling as far as tier list clear goes, but Geb is just about near the bottom as far as supports are concerned. So side lane's going to be lacking severely in pressure for Hex Mambo. Generally, if that's the case, that means that you're having a situation where the Storm are likely to be playing very far up in these lanes very aggressively, so you want a jungler that can get involved early on and try and alleviate some of that pressure or make use of that aggressive positioning. I'm not certain that Hunbots is that anymore.
Yeah.
But late game team fight, if you look at Hex Mambo in a late game 30-minute 5-on-5 engagement, that's when this draft gets scary. That's exactly what they're looking for. They've got a great CC core, Cataclysm, everything from Kumbhakarna, Fear No Evil, all going to put massive threat on CC immune ultimates and beads on the side of the Storm. You've got great scaling from Jingwei, who can go towards this new age style of build. Baba Yaga as well is going to be very strong with what I can only assume is going to be a Warlock survivability build that is still decent scaling and damage. But it is going to be a very, very steep hill for Hex Mambo to climb to get to the point where this composition will work.
Yeah, for sure. I'm completely with you here. The Hunbots especially, I'm looking on the board, I'm thinking what really is following up from that? Baba Yaga's got a lot of...
She's got some.
Yeah, she's got a lot of like that sustained damage, but nothing so much as, the Ra Snipe, the Thoth ultimate.
Two potions plus a first ability? I don't know. That's pretty good.
It's, it's staggered out. It definitely could work. I'm just like, from a instant snap damage kind of viewpoint, I'm not really seeing that from this Mambo team, but who knows, they could prove me wrong. It's not going to be us who's going to be breaking it down, though. We've got Dave and Ro on the cast.
That's right, it's the Storm versus Hex Mambo as Dolson and Ro bring you into game 1 of 1. I can, Ro, I can believe they put you here. This is right where you're supposed to be, and I'm happy to have you alongside me. So these best of 1 sets, these individual game sets, always very unique because, as a maybe even former coach, you can glean me some information.
Sure.
And we talked a little bit about it on the desk yesterday. Super unique in the composition here for the Storm. Is this a draft where you're throwing out sort of a unique composition? You've maybe played it a few times in scrims, but in these best of 1 sets, you're maybe just trying to catch the opposing team off guard.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of what we expected when a team comes out and says, A, in an interview that we're going to be picking some weird stuff, and 2, it's a whole new meta and a whole new patch, right? But I mean, Mambo themselves also have a pretty odd comp, if you were to ask me. I know we saw a lot of Geb back in like Season 4, Season 5 when you could buy these, support starters, but we haven't seen him this patch much at all. Granted, he's got the Boomer's Hammer. He will probably scale very well at level 20, but you have to get there first. And I think on the other side, Storm have quite a bit of pressure to put on.
Yeah, you're looking at a very Deathwalker-y style pick, it feels
is.
like, when you get a Geb. Part of me thought it would be Kumbo over in solo lane, to be honest. But
I've seen him play both.
We've seen him play both, and so I shouldn't be surprised either way. The Des put a lot of emphasis on the jungle in picks and bans, and Mifflin, I wouldn't say relegating, but emphasizing that Hunbots is so ultimate, maybe dependent later on in the game in those team fights. And I look at Magic Feet as well and how impactful Magic Feet has been for this Storm team. And all of the picks that we've seen him succeed on feels like some of what we saw banned out during picks and bans in game number 1. Do you think this Osiris jungle is at a spot where it can succeed in a meta like we've got?
I do think. I mean, we just saw it last game, and it had quite a lot of success. We've seen Sino play these auto-attack junglers before. Once they get to the point where they have that executioner, they can call these objectives, and they can burn them down. That was with double Hunter comps, whereas this is a Zhong Kui and a Heimdall. Heimdall, no steroid for himself, so not doing a whole lot of DPS. Zhong Kui not doing a whole lot of DPS, although I've seen them build attack speed before, so I wouldn't be too surprised. But, I think they can get to a point, maybe 17, 18 minutes. I'm not sure what the timing is for this patch, where they can pull objectives just before Mambo get to their spikes of this double Boomber's Hammer, I mean, look, talking about Deathwalker as well, I've seen him, well, I coached him for a year.
You did?
And one of the things he told me was that the period of where Sobek was the best solo laner was his favorite period, and that was my worst period. I hated that. Whereas Sobek would just sit on his tower and just wait to pluck somebody in because they can't clear the wave in front of him. So he is loving this right now. If he can get to that 20-minute mark, he's a happy boy.
Well, looks like a purple buff invade attempt for the Storm here, and they're going to bring 3 members Trix Tank will have to dash away. Should be confirmed purple buff here for the Storm. Imagine there's a little pressure to be had in my Zen on the Heimdall, Ymir for Oceans. So pushing back the Jingwei and Kumakarna early, maybe not unheard of.
No, it's definitely what they should be doing. You know, they're strong enough to sit under that tower and farm and scale into that late game. But that Storm, that's doing what they should be doing.
Right.
You know, putting the pressure on. They don't want them to. You know, it might be inevitable that they get to late game in this meta, but they don't want them to get there faster than they should, right? So when you've got the advantage, you use it to your advantage.
I wonder if that's something Johnny maybe starts to realize is going to happen a little bit more often. Next purple buff cooldown, we'll keep our eyes on the mid and the jungle of Hex Mambo.
Yeah, he did have a look at the blue buff, and I believe he got it. I mean, Ozzy's not caring about it too much. You know, he's got the potions. He can sustain mana quite easily. He's not too concerned if he has to back and lose a bit of mana, because he's not going to be pressured by a Geb too much. That being said, Deathwalker making his way to the back camps. You know, the Boomer's Hammer will help him out a little bit here, I suppose, but an Osiris is on his way.
Yeah, something I didn't think I'd be seeing today is a 3.5-minute back camp invade from a Geb solo, but that's on me. Not realizing Deathwalker was going to be in this game. That's always going to happen, or the potential for that to happen.
That's true. I've seen him
a little bit higher.
Yeah, he's played it on a controller, acted like he's VR gaming with you know, acting out the RTO. So, you know, Guardian's his thing, and he's clearly had some creative thoughts behind it.
Talk to me a little bit, because we've sort of skirted over the Zhang Kui in mid and Baron solo. I want to look at Zhang Kui specifically, because yesterday, I think it was you and I on desk maybe breaking down a Zhang Kui solo lane pick. Zhang Kui now, more than I thought I'd see this pick in general so far in these last couple of weeks. Are you sold on this pick? You think he's in a good spot?
I think so. I mean, we saw him have one rough game yesterday, though it was in the solo lane. He ended up going like 0-7 or 0-8, but hey, his team won, so he
That's right.
He did what he needed to do. You know,
That's
I saw
why.
him blink under a Phoenix and force the enemy team back despite not having any damage of his own. But hey, in the mid lane, he'll most likely have damage. And when he has damage, his 3, his 2, they can hit pretty hard. So yeah, I do have to respect him a little bit. That being said, when he's less tanky, he got that, didn't he?
Unlucky.
Yeah. That being said, when a Zhang Kui is less tanky, that could open him up to dying to a Humbat Salt. But the problem is those Humbat Salts are not coming very often, you know. He's starting a Transcendence, so he doesn't have too much mana for this fight.
It's a purple buff invade. This one's successful again, but Johnny is here and Magic Feet is low. The teleport onto the Osiris. Is there enough chase down, though, in my Zen? Through for the body blocks as well. Great wall from Oceans keeps Johnny in place. And it looks like we will get a disengage with no first blood. So we wondered if we would see an answer from Johnny on the next round of purple buffs. There was. Nearly resulted in a kill, but still mounting pressure on the left.
Yeah, but that buys them some time to get to that late game. On the other side of the map, though, that means Ozzy gets his blue, so he's comfortably farming towards his stacking item. You know, soon enough he'll be able to out-pressure this Geb. I don't think he'll be invading back camps like Deathwalker was, but maybe he's that comfortable as well. We'll see.
Why do we see this this increase in Warlock staff? You know, I think when I see Baba Yaga, I imagine you kind of go for these stacking style builds. Charon's coin first for zeros. You'll get good value out of that. What about Warlock staff right now has just made it a catch-all item, it feels like, across multiple roles?
It's all the stats you want, right? You're just missing out on a bit of cooldown, but it's just because those other items that were formerly in that slot, so like the, I guess the flat pen, have all been, you know, they've taken small nerfs over time, and with the games getting into later, you have more time to stack these items, and that's when they become slowly better. You know, you just want to be tankier because, you know, you've already got more health, make these fights last even longer. Baron, for example, has it, so if he gets his heal off more often, not more often because he doesn't have cooldown, but doesn't die before he gets his heal off because he is tankier, then that's great.
You can get a little damage in there as well, as you mentioned. You get a little bit of everything that you want.
He will need that damage to clear the waves as well, so definitely a good item for him to have.
A little bit of help there in the soul lane for Ozzy on the Baron. We've seen some success from Baron and games where Baron maybe shies by the wayside a little bit. Really impactful in team fights later on with that life of the party. Red buff is back up. Remember, Johnny stole it away almost, even though it's the Hex Mambo red buff. Under pressure from the Storm on the last rotation.
That's right, but he's doing what he needs to do, right? He's just buying his team time so they can get to that point in the late game. You know, he hasn't even had to use his ult in a time like that. You know, I think I would have preferred to see Storm, you know, putting the pressure on it and at least forcing Humbats to fight you with no ult.
Right. Yeah.
He has it back up now, however.
Instead, we'll put some pressure over towards the greater Scorpion. Johnny now by the Oracles. If there were to a fight to be brewing over towards mid, Johnny would have been able to rotate on through. And that's something that's a really good point, because the Desk talked about how later on in the game, the Fear No Evils can be so impactful later on in team fights. But maybe, Ro, you're hoping to see Johnny a bit more active early on. You go Transcendence, though. Maybe you need some time to stack that up. What's the power curve looking like for this Hunt?
I mean, I just think he's gotten a little greedy and he's getting away with it, which is great for them. You know, they may not be in the gold lead because they are losing things like that Scorpion, but I don't think that little bit amount of gold matters, even if it multiplies over the next couple minutes to get to that, you know, late game mark where they start to get to level 20, or get, you know, maybe he'll get Jotuns next, I would imagine, after that Transcendence, and it'll be up to 30% CDR once he gets those Transcendence stacks. So I think it's good for him that he hasn't been pressured too much. He's been able to respond to the aggression that Storm has brought to the enemy invade buffs. So, you know, he's sitting comfortable. I think, you know, Mambo, even being a slight bit behind, they're in a happy spot right now.
Yeah, not a bad spot, especially when the desk, and maybe you, Ro, agree that later on in this game is when Hex Mambo could really start to hit their stride. Magic Feet on the flip side, starting with the Stone Cutting Sword and with Mannequin Scepter. So maybe you imagine, and we've already seen some pressure on the purple buffs, that Magic Feet wants to get involved. A Mez onto Joshi, and a little damage from Zeros as well. That's a triple wall, and maybe nearly a double freeze from Oceans. His ultimate goes down as well, but it is a leap away from Hex Mambo. All these small moments, I'm thinking we're about to get a fight.
A whole lot of nothing
but it's a disengage from Hex Mambo.
That's right, but we're still seeing pressure in the dual lane from the Heimdall. Oh. And now a big blink, that's huge,
nice,
but I don't know if the engage is going to be enough. They don't have the damage to follow up.
Yeah, the Fear No Evil gets onto 2 as well. Epic uppercut, drops Joshi back down to earth. Double freeze from Oceans this time. The tethers are out from Magic Feet, but no stuns end up coming through. So there are some ultimates in answer here, but again, it looks like we'll get a full disengage. Zeros did some nice chunk damage on the end of that fight. But still, somehow, Ro, everyone on the map stays alive.
Yeah, I mean, if this is a boxing match, it's kind of just sparring right now. You know, nobody's getting knocked out in these matches so far.
No, not just yet. Xibalba Storm, though, the ones asking a lot of the questions. Just this 1,000 gold lead in the first 9 or so minutes. The last rotation of purple and red buffs left uninvaded by the Xibalba Storm, despite them putting a little bit of pressure early on those 2 buffs. So it looks like both hunters may be considering a different early build path here. Devourer's Gauntlet, of course, to start for both, as we've so often seen. But it looks like Chin Size, Xe, something like that early in the build for In My Zen, whereas Echrome's got his mind on some crit.
Yeah, I mean, that's the Jingwei build, and I guess Heimdall does prefer a little bit of kin size for himself. He needs the attack speed because he doesn't have, you know, an inbuilt steroid.
Right.
But he does have the auto cancels. One thing I wanted to talk about was that even though Storm have the map pressure, you know, bringing the fight to Mambo are the ones that do get the trebuchet in the end. So we'll see if they hold that. You know, maybe if they lose some pressure in a particular lane, or I guess that dual lane, they can send out the trebuchet to alleviate that and buy them more time to get to the late game.
Do you think trebuchet? All right. So how much flexibility do you think there is around playing around the trebuchet? Because I feel like we've seen teams hold it. We've seen teams immediately send it on its way. We've seen teams build up 2 trebuchets in different lanes and send them at the same time. Do you think there is a decent amount of flexibility on how to use them?
There is, yeah. I think we haven't seen anything yet, right? We haven't seen the SPL players play with them. We've only had the patch for, you know, what, a week live, something like that. So I think there's a lot of work to be done and a lot of strategies to be made. I'm sure we'll be shown either today or, you know, later in the week or next week of what it can really do. I think for now, well, we'll talk about this fight for now.
Yeah, could be a kill onto Joshi. Another Fear No Evil goes down, but another Zhang Kui walking away. Will he get away, though? He's burning down in the fire, but Ocean's through for some peel. That was a 2 versus 3. And Joshi will limp away out of the mid lane. And so Hex Mambo, they are asking some questions themselves as well. Could be another one here if Uzi is able to grab a stun. Does get one onto Johnny. Tricks Tank low on the left, but remember, does have that passive. Will be hard to finish off that kill.
But all of a sudden, your second support is here. So
that's right, you got Deathwalker.
Exactly. So, and he's got the, you know, the aura items. He's going to reduce that damage that Magic Feet is doing in these team fights. But he does get that pressure. You know, they won that small little engagement in mid, so he's able to take a red buff. Maybe it's too little, too late though. You know, we're already getting up to the, you know, 11 minutes 30. That's close enough to late game that they're feeling comfortable and there's no kills. You know, we haven't seen a Gold Fury pulled yet, that we might see it now.
Yeah, it could. With Chin Size there for In My Zen, that's a nice little power spike, especially if you're starting to swing on some of those tankier targets. Gold Fury pulled. Hex Mambo know about this. Oracles and ward coverage for Hex Mambo, and the Gold Fury is low. You'll have to out-confirm Tricks Tank. A freeze, fantastic, from Oceans, and the Storm snag the Gold Fury. and head on away. In my Zen even sent out his ult on a
Like
Trix
Magic
Tank
Feet still
there.
wants to fight.
But is there a fight on a Magic Feet at the end? Lord of the Afterlife used. Trix Tank trying to chase
Johnny's
down the
time.
jungler. Uh-oh, Johnny here as well.
But still doesn't have that ultimate.
Doesn't have ult. Looks like red buff on the mind of Hex Mambo. Magic Feet will fall for first blood. There was just too much onto the Osiris. So long term, you get gold if you're the Storm, but you lose your jungler for first blood.
Yeah, I think that's just back of a mistake of Magic Feet. Looks like his team just wanted to get that Gold Fury, then walk away. We saw his team pathing out below him, just going back towards that base. Magic Feet said, you know, I'm still strong. I have Toxic Blade. I have this flat pen. I can fight. I'm Osiris in the early game, but they did just do a buffed Gold Fury in this patch. You know, it's not easy. They have to walk away after that. But he went for the high risk, high reward play, and it did not pay off.
Deathwalker invading speed as Gab out of the soul
Speaking
drops
of
it.
high risk, high reward,
He does
I don't
get
know if this one's
stunned
paying off either.
out of his rollout, but there is assistance from Trix Tank. So you get the speed, but do you get out is the question. You'll tank a couple tower shots, another freeze onto the rollout. Cataclysm catches onto 2, and Joshy answers the kill. I'll let you make the call, Rose. Speed buff in exchange for your life. Maybe more annoying than anything
Not
else.
worth it. I mean, like, we just saw Magic Feet make the same kind of mistake, just getting greedy, going for a little too much, and getting punished for it. You know, that mistake out of Magic Feet probably would have been a bigger deal than it is now. You know, now Deathwalker's given them, you know, they took some money and they've given it straight back to them.
They have. There could be a kill, though, for
It's
really the
Doom,
Storm. If Trix Tank isn't able to get out of this one, low health, low mana.
If you can chop him
Lord of
down.
the Afterlife down, but so is Fear No Evil, and E-Chrome is back from base. Magic Feet knocked up and tossed to the side as a rotation through from mid from Zeros knocks down the Osiris for a second time this game. And it is retreat time for the Xibalba Storm, and re-engage from Hex Mambo. A little more damage is in, and Zeros snags a double.
You can see if the Baron can do anything on a rotation. I mean, that was the strength of a Jingwei just flying in when they least expected it. I
don't
think
know.
contest this red buff. I
He's
don't think
desperate
he can
for a
take it on
kill.
his own.
He's got some low health targets and,
beads. He has no
red in his
teleport.
eyes. Knockback on a Deathwalker.
Still has
And
his
ultimate,
Yeah, so
but
they
won't
walk
connect
away.
on the tricks.
Fair enough, fair enough.
So it ends up being a nice trade out for Hex Mambo. 2 kills, swing through. That brings the experience maybe half as high as it was just a moment ago. Gold, I was about to say, trickles down a bit towards Hex Mambo as well. And so you are starting, I think, sensing a bit of a shift here where Storm still are remaining active on the map, but Hex Mambo more confident in fighting back.
Yeah, they always have a response, right? They don't want to let Storm snowball the early game because that is their biggest weakness. You know, once Mambo get close to these level 20s, which we've got another 6 levels for the Geb here, so I don't think he'll be contesting this on his own, but I guess he might prove me wrong. He was solo invading speed buffs.
Wow.
Looks like just a means there from Johnny's enough to do it.
Well, look, when the Fear No Evil, I will say, even though there's only, actually, Johnny's participated in 100% of the kills, Fear No Evils early on in the mid lane were connecting. They've looked good up to this point so far. And I'd be a little bit threatened by Johnny as well. Got away with the Transcendent start into Brawlers.
Yeah.
And then hi-rez after that. So you're going to see a nice little power spike here for Johnny as well. The wheels starting to spin on the Hunbats. I feel like you're maybe getting to a point where some of the squishies are going to be chunked down heavily.
Yeah, if I'm Storm, I'm starting to get nervous because now Mambo's damage is coming online, and soon enough, you know, I talked about it yesterday, the Secret Service to the presidents, you know, their Secret Service is going to come online as well. But, you know, for now, this Humbats is definitely a threat. You know, maybe they need to force his ultimate so they can, you know, fight when it is down because it is still a long cooldown, only 10%, well, getting close to 20% CDR now, but he foregoes the Jotun's Wrath and instead went a Brawlers against a team that doesn't have too much healing. I suppose they do with the Devo's gloves and the Jean-Qui and a little bit from the Baron as well, since he has power.
There are a couple, and I want you. So much of the conversation around Fear No Evil is either making use of already burnt beads or burning the beads with that ultimate. Joshy's got beads, In My Zen does as well. No one else on the Storm, or rather, Uzi just picked up a set of beads for heading on back into lane. Has CC immunity and fear in not Fear No Evil in Life of the Party. So between Magic Feet and Oceans, how concerned are you about surviving through some of those Fear No Evils later in the game?
Yeah, later in the game, that's the issue, right? Right now, they're not too concerned, but once they get to the point where these triple blinks are actually going to be used aggressively from Trix Tank, Johnny, and Deathwalker, you know, like, again, closer to the late game, then they're going to start burning the beads on the first blink and getting a full engage on the second and third blink, you know, and that's when they have to worry.
Do you think Oceans needs beads at level 12?
Look, the Spirit Robe is going to help him, but he's only got 2 items so far. I think he needs something to react. Maybe he can get the shell off before they get the engage on him, and maybe he can get the ultimate off that does reduce damage taken before they get the ultimates on him. I think you'll be okay. Look, if they're full engaging on a Ymir, you would hope your backline is going to be able to, back you up and do something to punish them.
Right. Need is maybe a strong word. Could make use, but there are some good options out there for Oceans. Yeah. Maybe otherwise. There is a set of beats picked up from Magic Feet as well. So trying to keep themselves on the map.
Still 2 levels down because of those deaths.
That's true.
That is going to hurt.
Yeah, Johnny's carved out a nice little lead here in the jungle, and that's been so important for the Storm, getting Magic Feet off to good starts. A lot of their success has been through Magic Feet and what they've found in the North American SEC. I wonder, because Hex Mambo only sent Trix Tank over to the Gold Fury first time. They do know that this is going on now. Oni Fury getting chunked down by the Storm. Zero's close by. Johnny, of course, hanging in the back with Blink. And again, just a stare, just a threat.
That's all they need.
From Hex Mambo is enough to force the teleport from Uzi and the back off from the Storm.
I'm surprised they're not more confident. Uzi did have that teleport. They could have taken that, 4v4 for now, and then Uzi teleports in late before the Geb can rotate.
Right.
But they didn't want to. They didn't want to take that risk, I guess. I think they should be going for these high risk, high reward plays when they're up against this late game of Hex Mambo.
Right. You need to roll the dice a little bit more often, especially when the gold lead has done nothing but shrink here.
That's right.
As of late, it started off nice, right around 1,000. We're wondering if it would build up. Has just started to go down a little bit. Hex Mambo now in control of the experience by a little bit. On the flip side, do you think Hex Mambo are at a point where instead of just a mean stare, maybe they can get more active around some of these objectives?
Maybe that's more of a feeling thing in game,
right.
if they're really feeling up to it. If Storm are as scared as they are, maybe that gives Mambo more confidence. But I think part of Storm being scared is that they don't have the Executioner yet on Osiris, so they're missing some of that burn, some of that DPS. Like I said before, Heimdall not a big DPS god himself. He doesn't have crit. He has got the kin size instead, so their objective DPS is not the best. So that gives time for Deathwalker, Johnny, and Trix Tank to get in range of those blinks.
And Hex Mambo have had time to hit some of those damage items that we were also talking about. Hydra's finish for Johnny. Zero's finishes off the Soul Reaver. A nice percent pen, flat pen, anti-heal, and some percentage damage for Zeros, and that seems to be a simple kill for Hex Mambo. Magic Feet for the 3rd time out of 4 kills for Hex Mambo. Magic Feet just a bit caught out. It looks like Lord of the Afterlife is down. Fear No Evil and Blink are down. I think you get the idea here.
Yeah.
That it was just a Blink initiation from Johnny.
Maybe trying to defend one of his solo waves and didn't expect Johnny to be around. I'm not sure what happened there. Maybe we'll get a look at it later.
Yeah, it could be. It's been a tough game for Magic Feet up to this point. Now 2 levels behind. Again, 3 of the 4 deaths that Xibalba Storm have fallen at Magic Feet. Goes back and grabs Chin Size. Wondered if it might be Executioners. Ends up being a Chin Size for Magic Feet. You still imagine that's a nice little power spike item for Magic Feet.
It is, yeah. And to be fair, that is where he's kind of missed his... Oh, here we go. We got the Johnny kill as well. So it looks like he is defending a solo wave there. Maybe we'll get a Geb ult, and we have...
Yep. Geb,
I would imagine the Osiris ult is not ideal. It isn't, right? He's already got the Humbats 3 on him, so he can follow straight through that ult. Johnny still got his jump up there at the end, so that kill was pretty much free for him.
Well, I think right when we saw the replay coming up, you were talking a bit about the Chin Size here for Magic Feet. You still think that's a valuable power spike?
Yeah. Look, it's still good. It's always going to do more damage than Executioner on an enemy god anyway, but he has kind of missed that window where Executioner would have done a lot on these objectives, because I don't think Storm, especially after that death, are in a position to be pulling these objectives, and that spells danger when Deathwalker is only 2 levels away from that Boombas, Johnny only 2 levels away from that Boombas, and the rest of their team comp scaling well into the late game as well. I think Trix Tank, level 13, I mean, again, ahead of Oceans, but still, alleviating or giving some of that farm to the rest of his team so they get to their power spikes quicker.
And for the first time this game, Hex Mambo pull ahead in the gold. Now, it's small. It's a couple hundred gold, but point being, the gold and the experience have completely flipped. 4,000 experience in the lead. A lot of that in the jungle, and then maybe half a level to a level sprinkled elsewhere on the map. Echrome hits a pretty decent power spike here as well. Devos, Wind Demon, Silver Branch, and Deathbringer now finished up for Echrome. This Jingwei, look, bought some time, 3 assists in the back pocket, played safe, and a Deathbringer is going to feel just fine rotating into these fights here in just a moment. And Hex Mambo send that Trebuchet, maybe just building up some pressure here on left.
That looks like a bit of confidence. Now they're willing to actually press the go button. Now they might pull this Gold Fury or Forcify it. So far, it looks, yeah, they did get the Oracle, so they have that vision that they need. Trebuchet is gone already. Maybe that helped. I have to stay in this lane. Speaking of in my Zen, has to stay in that lane and clear that Trebuchet. Can't go ahead and contest those Oracles.
Yeah, it does build a little crit later on, does in my Zen. with that Wind Demon. It doesn't look like Deathbringer will finalize his build. So I'm excited. Maybe if I'm the Storm, I'm not excited, but I am interested, maybe it's a better word for me, to see how much damage E-Chrome is going to be able to do later on in some of these fights, because as of now, there's no Spectral Armors built for Oceans or Uzi or anyone else who may want one. Feels like E-Chrome has done a really good job of just buying time, being Jingwei, and with the Deathbringer completed, Ro, I have to imagine is in a really good spot to make an impact.
Yeah, especially if you're going to have a Zhonghui running at you. You know, he's not a tanky Zhonghui. He does have the E-Stuff, so maybe he can get a couple procs on that and get a fair amount of health. But I think he's still going to get his health basically removed from 2 or 3 crits from E-Chrome. And he will get those crits with his 2 as well. So he's feeling happy. He's going to upgrade his starter soon. We've got 2 Boomba's Hammers on Deathwalker and Johnny. We've got a Boomba's Boomba's Hammer on Uzi already. So that's maybe a saving grace for their team fight. But we'll have to see. Again,
good item, huh?
Yeah, it is pretty good, especially level 20, reducing those cooldowns. Deathwalker in a weird spot, but that isn't the first time we've seen this game.
Nah, he'll roll out. Well, one time his rollouts just kept getting interrupted. This one,
He's still surrounded by 3.
Okay, he is surrounded, and that life of the party works out well. Deathwalker uses the beads, double stun, rollout channeled again. It's taken a long time to kill off this Geb, but kill him off they do. How impactful could that be, though? The rest of the Storm already over here on the right side of the map. Are you pulling Pyro? Are you pulling Fire Giant? Are you forcing a fight? Looks like Pyromancer is the answer, unless Trix Tank can make something happen. Zeros could also make something happen, but it is stolen away, and it looks like Zeros gets it. So the Storm grab a kill. Well, they end up losing the Pyromancer on the other side. Now a fight breaking out. Trix Tank with the epic uppercut. Uzi put down by E-Chrome, and the Jingwei finally starting to flex those muscles a bit, but Joshi has gone into the backline. Airstrike forced away. Magic Feet looking for the Jingwei, but E-Chrome's got the damage. Up and over goes Magic Feet, but it's a disengage from E-Chrome as well. Zeros dancing around the back of the fight, and again deals some fadeaway damage. Ends up being well, I guess technically 2 for 2, a Deathwalker dying earlier on, and a steal on the Pyro for
Considering
Hex
Deathwalker started that by dying for pretty much nothing, that went great for Mambo. Zero is able to basically not be threatened by Magic Feet at all, because Johnny ends up trading his life and just buying a lot of time so the Osiris can't get on the enemy backline. And as soon as we saw that Zhonghui go in, we saw Zero's Aegis, we saw E-Chrome fly out of there with his ultimate, so the Zhonghui ultimate basically nullified, and then the backline free cast once Magic Feet comes back with low health and not able to fight much.
And so a little spike in gold for Hex Mambo, and that was a first glimpse at some of the damage we figured E-Chrome might be able to do later on in this game. Climbed up those damage charts just a little bit, but also a good fight for Enmai Zen, who is second in the game as far as damage goes. But Zeros makes the big plays there. 3-0-2 on the Baba Yaga. Soul Gem now later on in that build, so you're going to get some good flat pen, percent penalty. We've already talked about Robot, but big burst damage and some healing as well.
Yeah, and he's got all the cooldown he needs now as well. So he's a happy man. He's sitting comfy. He's built a build that scales well on a team comp that scales well. They just basically need a 5v5. And what I mean is Deathwalker just doesn't need to be zoning or proxying at 22 or 3 minutes.
A two-man stun on a Cataclysm's great, like in a team fight though, but not when you're trying to escape elsewhere on the map. So Hex Mambo now can rally and look for a fight.
Yeah, look, Deathwalker did live for a little while, but his team was coming to save him. His team wasn't doing a Fire Giant while Deathwalker was buying time or anything like that.
Right, a small moment that still ended up working out all right for Hex Mambo. This could be the first big 5v5 as Deathwalker stuns down Uzi, who's in the life of the party. Ocean's just burnt through by Johnny. Fear No Evil separates out this engagement, forces the Storm to backpedal away. And Hex Mambo now just hoping they've got enough speed to chase down the Xibalba Storm. Looks like Tier 1 Tower will be a safe haven. Is it an immediate FG pull, though?
Yeah, that's a greedy one. They might look to bait them in and turn on them when they come back in, because Uzi does have that sustain. They're not out of it yet, even though they are outnumbered.
Joshi walking forward. Blink in from Magic Feet as well. Fire Giant down to half HP. Enmai Zen into the Bifrost, but has to ult away. And look at Johnny teleporting back onto the Heimdall, who will live. And one final Bifrost back beneath the Tier 1 tower. Fire Giant half reset, now being melted through, and the Storm have made the call. Hex Mambo are going to grab the big one.
They'll grab Joshi as well.
Could be a double collapse. The Tier 1 tower low on health. Trix Tank rooted in place, but is able to get out and away. And another Fear No Evil is up, and another life for the party. delays the inevitable. Hex Mambo get FG and a couple more kills.
Now we're at the point where, you know, we saw Storm pushing up that right lane, aggressive like they've always been this game.
Oh my
but
goodness.
now Mambo are pulling the trigger and saying, you know what, we're strong now, it's our turn to fight.
My goodness, that is a 5,500 gold swing, a 13,000 experience swing, all in the course of a couple of minutes. And those are decently long death timers here, Ro. You still got a couple towers in left and one in mid. But the Storm got to be careful here with how much they're willing to commit. Another few kills could just result in the game being over, but it looks like right side Phoenix down, and with the new tankier towers and Phoenixes and Titans, Hex Mambo won't look for the end.
Yeah, that's great macro from them. Just get a Phoenix, get out. The enemy team's going to be spawning in 10 seconds. Go, you know, you just earned a lot of gold. You won a team fight. You got a Fire Giant. You got, I believe, a tier 2 and a tier 1 and a Phoenix. So you've got a lot of gold to spend. I think it was great for them to back there. They can go push the other side of the map. They have no trebuchets to play with, but I don't think they need it. They're so strong at this point in the game. And this is what Storm should have been afraid of, you know. Once they get to this point that the level 20s, these Boomers Hammers come online on the Mambo team, you know, it's really hard to win a team fight against that, you know. So maybe they can try not to get, you know, such a poor engage. I think Trickstank got a great blink there and was able to blow Ozzy up down to, you know, maybe 20% health. When you have a Baron on his back foot, he's not able to chase you down like Storm want to do.
And how much are Hex Mambo now able to get off of this Fire Giant push? Being able to not immediately have to reset on an FG, go get the Phoenix, and then go back, reset.
That is a luxury.
And spend all that gold. Just feels great for Hex Mambo. You've got 2 full minutes left on the Fire Giant buff. You knock down 2 of the 3 remaining towers. You could rotate to mid, I suppose, but it looks like Hex Mambo just going to try to mirror as Johnny over towards mid, where Magic Feet pushed up a wave and is headed back.
Looks like they're pinging their waves as well. So it's a long time to wait, but that is, I believe, an Oni fire wave. So someone's going to have to deal with that, which Magic Feet can, but Johnny's not going to give him that breathing room.
Wondered if we would see, looks like Trebuchet chilling in mid. Wondered if we'd see Hex Mambo send that one on its way, but it's just hanging out in the back for now. Looks like a little 2 split over to the left. I'm nervous if I'm anyone on the Storm right now trying to counter out Johnny. It feels like this Hunbats has really gotten to a point in the game where some 1v1s are going to be hard to come by. You got Blood Forged on the other end of it as well. Could be a wraparound, though, by Magic Feet. 4 members of Hex Mambo, as Johnny is not here just yet, but Magic Feet absolutely melted through on the back pedal by Hex Mambo. Left side Phoenix now under the eye of Echrome. Wall up promotions as well as the ultimate going down. Echrome finds the auto attacks, but doesn't get out. In My Zen has chunked down the enemy AD carry, and that'll slow down the push potential.
Yeah, there's still a ticking time bomb in that right lane. They have that big fire minion wave buffed by the Oni buff, followed by another fire minion wave, so they're going to bring Johnny back to that tower because they need the tower damage that Echrome was providing, but he doesn't have it anymore.
Trickstank finds a Mez, but able to back away. Our Hex Mambo, nice double stun though!
Completely
as
countered.
Magic Feet is able to follow up on a nice bit of damage from Joshi on the lockdown. Deathwalker rolls himself away. The Titan, though,
better get back.
Under attack, losing half of his HP. Hex Mambo, they are able to snag another Phoenix. Right side will be respawning here in a couple of minutes. Fire Giant buff will fall off. And as far as a setup Fire Giant, Hex Mambo have absolutely done that.
Yeah, I mean, that was a great engage by Joshi, but just completely countered by the knockup from Trickstank. You know, taking all that damage out of there. They walk away. They've gotten what they wanted. They have the Phoenix. That right Phoenix is spawning soon, but then now they also have a Trebuchet coming up the mid lane. So they're basically winning in every regard at this point.
Yeah, I've been praying and hoping that we'd see an awkward moment of a Trebuchet hanging outside of the Phoenix line and dealing damage to the Phoenix, and the team doesn't want to step out of their base to
and it just
deal with the Trebuchet. Yeah. I've been hoping we'd see that at some point, but actually teams on the defense of the Trebuchets have done a pretty good job of slowing them down. Blue buff invade at 31 minutes by Magic Feet and In My Zen. What will it cost you, though? A stun and a knock-up on the Magic Feet. Lord of the Afterlife out is the answer. Uzi around the backside. Life of the party walled off as the Xibalba Storm taking some damage and now trying to run away. Hex Mambo have found some targets, but haven't quite found the kills they're looking for. Enhanced Fire Giant about to respawn, but can you get more? That's what Hex Mambo are searching for. Could be a collapse on 3 members over here on right. It is a Mez out from Trickstank, a root onto Uzi, and a Fear No Evil, forcing both actives off of In My Zen. Oceans will actually turn around to kill and stay alive, but Zeros remedies that immediately. Oceans gets one. Johnny, though, falls as well. Now Echrome forced into the airstrike, but won't get out of it. And somehow the Xibalba Storm have turned around an initiation. Deathwalker doing his best to heal,
Dawson,
but the
somebody's got a back.
Storm have too much damage.
And In My Zen does get his
Oh my
back
God.
off. Unfortunately, Zeros could not stop that back.
What is happening, though, is the Storm continuing to chase down over on right. The Titan will survive, but Deathwalker and Trix Tank will not. Zeros into the ultimate for the second time this fight. Uzi burning down a little bit of damage, but Zeros on a rampage just
Uzi
has
wins
too
this.
much. Uzi should win this, but Zeros will get out alive. But you're right, Ro, the entire time that Titan was taking damage from fire minion waves. This is chaotic as everyone but Zeros dies on Hex Mambo.
I think Mambo got a little ahead of themselves. You know, they chased. We saw Storm try to get that engage before the Fire Giant comes up, but then they just got greedy and kind of chased them down the lane. That's all you need to do. You've bought time for your Fire Waves. Your Trebuchet was pushing down mid lane. You know, the Fire Giant's up, you can turn back to it. But instead, they try to, you know, flank around them and force the fight. They lost that fight, even though they had a decent engage. I think Joshi and In My Zen kind of just free casted in the early part of that fight and were able to kill Echrome, able to kill Johnny really quickly while they were engaging on Oceans. But, you know, just a little greedy from them. I think they were already in a winning position. Let your minions do the work for you. But instead, they went for a really fast engage and tried to win the game right there and then.
That's a great back from Uzi as well. Upgrades his Breastplate of Valor into Breastplate of Vigilance. Picks up a Spectral Armor finally. So Echrome suddenly doing a little less damage. And only a couple crit items for In My Zen. Forced out a couple Spectral Armors from Hex Mambo as well. So there is still a sizable gap for Hex Mambo as far as gold goes. Right around 7,000. And still meaningful as the build's finalizing for the Xibalba Storm. So Hex Mambo still playing with a lead row. It's about finding the right moment. Is this the right
Kill you
moment? It
this
appears
time.
to be so,
Yeah.
as Oceans just caught out and Hex Mambo double back for an enhanced Fire Giant.
They should probably give this one up. I don't think they have too much steal potential. Maybe Joshi can find a big blink, but Johnny still has his ult, and they still have 4 ults on the side of Hex Mambo, and you've got that Geb shield too, so they'll be just fine. That
All
Phoenix
right.
is up, but that Titan is low.
Wow, how many moments have we seen this game completely tilt, shift back and forth based on one player on either team just being a bit caught out? Ocean's a bit too far forward, uses everything at his disposal, but not quite enough. And now Hex Mambo, they've got a 5v4 with a very, very weak Titan for the next 15 seconds or so, but instead of just barreling down the base of the Storm, it looks like knocking down right side Phoenix, maybe knocking down left side Phoenix, a bit of a safer play.
Looks like Mambo already caught themselves being greedy once, and they didn't get
can't
to
do it
end the
again.
game as quite as fast as they could. So they're going to go back to their solid macro, which they have. They're a pretty tenured team. They have a lot of tenured players, that's for sure. So they're just going to go back to the safe play, use those fire minions. Now somebody has to guard the Titan in the right. Yep, Oceans will go do that.
They have to
Surprising
do it,
choice. I think, yep.
Or not,
Okay,
or
Magic
yep,
Feet,
yep.
that's much better.
At some point.
But I'm sure they're still going to lose this left Phoenix and then probably lose mid one as well if they don't fight it soon.
Well, Titan dealing with the minions on its own for now. Doesn't take that much in damage. Trix Tank, blink into the back. Pulled in by Life of the Party. Stun now onto the Kumba. Looks like Trix Tank will limp away, but still takes a lot of damage. What happens to Oceans? Echrome does, and the left side Phoenix suffers a similar fate. Uzi through the beads, burnt on down. Joshi, though, turns around to kill. Echrome's got a double. Into the airstrike he goes. Stun won't connect. Now just backpedaling as Magic Feet has knocked down the ADC. 2 remaining for the Storm. 3 remaining for Hex Mambo, but In My Zen still in a spot to make a big play happen. Will buy Frost away. 2 more Phoenixes down and 3 more kills for Hex Mambo.
They bought themselves some time, and Magic Feet is out, so they should be just fine here. I don't think they'll go for the mid Phoenix. They do have a decent-sized
Decent
wave, so
wave,
maybe
yeah.
they are getting greedy for it. And they are. I think Johnny will kind of like 5-shot this thing if he can get through.
You'd think. Echrome being dead maybe slows
No
it.
Aegis,
Oh my
no
god!
beats.
In My Zen is gone, and now you're maybe looking at the game for Hex Mambo. Magic Feet alone under the Titan, and Hex Mambo end the game in 36 minutes. Zeros at 7-0. And Hex Mambo knocked down the Xibalba Storm.
That's a 49k damage Baba Yaga right there. And we're talking about Hunters being OP in this meta.
Yeah, what in the world?
Echrome did have to fight into some decent itemization from the enemy team, but Zero has really put on a show there.
Yeah, that is a game set up by what the Dusk was talking about. Enough
Yes.
time goes by. the team fighting there from Hex Mambo, the composition scaling. We got to a point, even 25 or so minutes in, where it felt like Hex Mambo were just so comfortable, not without a stumble or two, right? There were still moments in that game where it felt like the Storm was going to get their footing.
I mean,
back.
that's what they were in such control at that point. Their team comp is so good at that point. You just kind of get greedy. It's like, whatever, if we make one mistake, we're not going to lose this game anyway. But somebody got yelled at, probably Deathwalker, and we're like, we're not going to make this mistake again. And just cleaned it up at the end and ended up pretty clean. Although Joshy got a big engage at the end, we were able to clean up a couple kills, and it doesn't matter in the end. Once you get into these longer team fights, you have the Boomber's Hammer, and they're just going to get those cooldowns back up, and that's what the Blink Get Ball did.
Well, look, the good news is for Hex Mambo, when you make the mistakes and you're like already 10,000 gold ahead, it's not that big of a deal. Hex Mambo, maybe call it an upset, grab a win in this best of one over the Xibalba Storm. We'll take a break, and then the desk will break down this game.
Thanks for that Prime Gaming sub. We see you.
And an astounding win there for Hex Mambo, coming out on top in, well, I mean, when we were looking at picks and bans, I don't think either of us were really, not that we weren't expecting that, but it was a unlikely scenario.
I thought it was going to be pretty difficult for
Yeah.
Hex Mambo to get to the point of the game where that draft would work, but that's exactly what happens. They get to that 25 or so minute mark, group up, and from there, just about every single team fight was very convincing. Turns out, though, those cheese strats, the corny stuff, the dumpster dive strategy that the Storm was alluding to wasn't necessarily all in the P's and B's. It was in how that game started. It was a very weird purple buff invade. Immediately, Magic Feet goes back to base, clears his entire jungle, and then doesn't miss out on anything. That significantly put Hex Mambo's dual lane behind in a composition where you'd think their side lanes would struggle anyway. But the Storm struggle to, I suppose, leverage that lead. There weren't many opportunities for the dual lane of the Storm to get overly active. They didn't get too many objectives despite getting the first gold free for themselves. And Hex Mambo, with superior map play, was able to stall out the game. Johnny clearly was concerned about his ability to deal damage in the late, so goes for a even later game slanted build with a Transcendence in that first slot. And that strategy of, hey, once we are grouped up as 5, once we're all getting around that 6th slot, once we are all level 20, we're just going to win, simply worked for Hex Mambo, and they were able to take out the North American team.
For sure, and you know, the Humbuts in particular was something that I think we were curious about how effective it would be. But I mean, Johnny ends this game what 5-1, 5-2. Like he did very, very well here to not only set up 4 kills onto the Xibalba Storm, but also pick up some for himself.
Yeah, he was very active on the map once he had that power spike behind him. It felt like he did a very good job of alleviating the pressure mainly in the soul lane. Felt like to me Johnny wasn't really too concerned about his dual lane, which I suppose is why you draft potentially one of the safest dual lanes you'll ever see. Trixtank, who has 2 lives available to him as long as that passive is up, and Echrome, who is just nearly unkillable on a Jingwei, CC immune ultimate, multiple dashes, the ability to fly back to lane once you head back to base. So it was a very clear strategy from Hex Mambo, who dominate this game. It was very impressive to see how well they were able to execute on the strategy that they had put forth.
And something to highlight here as well, his zeros with 49,000 damage. Couldn't quite break the 50, but that is still a significant number. And you know, I think we were talking about it just a couple minutes ago, but these games so far today, both the game ones that we've seen, have been post 35-minute games. And as you rightly touched on during picks and bans, this Baba Yaga may be the best late game scaling mage in the game.
I don't know if I said all that.
Okay, sorry.
I didn't say all that.
Maybe what, top 3? You wouldn't.
She's good. She's good late game. I don't want to put numbers to it, man. Then they're gonna fact check me, and that's when you expose yourself to Reddit and Twitch comments.
Mifflin explicitly said to me backstage that he thinks that Baba Yaga.
Objection,
is
hearsay.
Oh boy. Yeah. It's definitely high up there, though, right? Like, one of the best.
She scales very well, and she has unique itemization available to her in that she can stack up more effectively than everyone else, which does lend itself to great late games.
Well, that is going to be Hex Mambo moving into that third game of the day, the first best of 3, and it will have the Xibalba Storm moving down to face the Niflheim Wargs. Mifflin, let's talk about that first best of 3, the Tanukis versus Mambos. I think Tanukis really pulled out something interesting in that first game. How are we thinking about their chances up against Mambo?
Well, Mambo's looking very strong right now, which is a concern for me, but considering Tanuki was able to reroute themselves and hearing how they were discussing their own self-analysis of their match, saying, I know Snatty was very, I suppose, critical of himself. I think that it speaks volumes to the competitive nature of Yomi Tanuki to have a win and then still say, well, we still need to improve on this. We need to get ready for this. They were studying up, watching this set as well. I think that they've got decent chance, but I am favoring Hex Mambo.
Well, we'll have to see if Mifflin is right or if he's going to be proved wrong as we go and get ready for that first best of 3. Don't miss it. Be back in a couple minutes.